Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with me. And today we're tackling the topic of manifesting.
Oh, yeah, this is a fascinating one.
It is. It is.
Lots of different ideas out there.
So to ground ourselves, we're going to be taking a close look at this YouTube interview between Jay Shetty and Roxie Nafousi.
So for anyone who doesn't know Jay Shetty, he's a former monk.
Oh, yeah.
Who's now a best-selling author.
Big time.
And the host of this super popular podcast, On Purpose.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that one before.
Yeah.
It is everywhere.
And then Roxie Nafousi, she's a self-development coach, best-selling author herself.
Oh, wow.
And a manifesting expert.
Okay, so she knows her stuff then.
She really does.
Now, I have to admit, I was a little skeptical about this whole manifesting thing. At first, I was like, is this just wishful thinking? But then I learned about Roxie's story, and it really caught my attention.
Oh, yeah. Her story's amazing.
Like, she went from struggling with addiction to becoming this successful author and manifesting expert.
And get this, by actually applying the principles she now teaches.
Okay, so that's pretty convincing proof right there.
Right.
So this interview really emphasizes that manifesting is not about magic or some mystical force. It's really about self-development.
Exactly. It's about aligning your energy and actions with what you want to achieve in your life.
Okay, so it's not just wishing on a star and hoping for the best.
Not quite, but it can feel pretty magical when you start to see it working in your life.
So how does this actually work? What's the nitty-gritty?
Well, Roxie really stresses that we're manifesting all the time, whether we realize it or not.
Really?
Yeah, she says our thoughts, beliefs, actions, they're all sending out this energy and shaping our reality.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and she even has this really relatable example. She talks about waking up on the wrong side of the bed one morning and then everything just went wrong that day.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Missed the bus, spilled coffee, you name it.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly, and she believes it was all because of that negative energy she was putting out there.
Wow, I can definitely relate to that. Have you ever noticed that when you're in a bad mood, it's like you just attract more negativity?
Totally. It's almost like your mood becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And on the flip side, I've also noticed that when I'm feeling really positive and optimistic, things just seem to flow more easily.
And that's exactly what manifesting is all about, tapping into that positive energy and using it to create the life you want.
Okay, so if we're all manifesting all the time, what are some common misconceptions about this whole process?
Well, one of the biggest myths Roxie debunks is that visualization alone is enough. Like, just picturing yourself on a beach in Bali won't magically transport you there.
So it's not just daydreaming.
It's not about passive daydreaming. It's about actively working towards your goals and making choices that support that vision.
Okay, so it's not a magic ritual either. I thought maybe there was some secret formula involving crystals and chanting.
No secret formulas. It's really about shifting your mindset and adopting a lifestyle that's aligned with your goals. Things like journaling, creating vision boards, visualization, those can be helpful tools, but they're not manifesting itself.
So you're saying it's more about embodying the change you want to see, but are there any limits to what you can manifest?
That's a really good point. And yeah, there are definitely limits.
Okay.
You can't manifest things that are outside of your control, things that depend on factors beyond your own actions and beliefs.
So I can't manifest winning the lottery.
Probably not, but you can manifest the abundance and opportunities that could lead to financial success.
Like that way of looking at it.
It's about focusing on what you can control, your own actions, your thoughts, your beliefs.
That makes a lot of sense.
And something both Jay and Roxie really emphasized is the importance of self-worth in the whole manifesting process.
Why is that so important?
Well, think about it. If you don't believe you deserve the things you desire, you're creating this block.
Oh, interesting.
It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You can put in all the effort, but it's going to keep leaking out.
So if I don't believe I'm worthy of love, for example, it'll be harder to manifest a healthy relationship, even if I'm doing all the right things.
Exactly. That underlying lack of self-worth can really sabotage your efforts.
That's powerful.
And Roxie makes this really interesting statement. She says, manifesting has become such a trend that I think it devalues it so much.
What do you think she means by that?
I think she's calling for a deeper understanding of the practice, recognizing that healing those deep-seated beliefs about ourselves is essential for real lasting success with manifesting.
It's about addressing the root, not just the symptoms.
Exactly.
Now, self-worth is so crucial. How do we overcome those feelings of fear and self-doubt that always seem to creep in, especially when we're trying to manifest those big goals? Those inner critics can be pretty loud.
Absolutely. And Jay actually shares his own experience with self-doubt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he talks about how he really struggled with it after leaving the monastery.
I can imagine that would be a huge transition.
Yeah. It was. And he learned to overcome it by focusing on his purpose, his desire to help others.
So finding your why, your driving force, can help you push through those doubts.
Absolutely. And Roxie adds another layer to this.
Okay, I'm listening.
She believes that the lack of unconditional love during childhood can contribute to feelings of unworthiness, which can then fuel those fears and doubts later on in life.
That makes a lot of sense. If you grow up constantly seeking validation from others, it can be really hard to cultivate that inner sense of self-worth.
Exactly.
So where do we even begin to heal from that?
Roxie suggests starting with self-compassion. Acknowledge the fear and the doubt. Apologize to your inner child for carrying those burdens, and then start taking action to build self-worth.
That sounds like a really powerful approach, but what does that action actually look like?
That's a great question, and it's a very personal journey.
Of course.
It requires self-reflection and a willingness to challenge those negative beliefs we hold about ourselves. So I'd ask you, what are some areas where you experience fear or self-doubt? And how can you start practicing self-compassion to begin healing those beliefs?
Those are definitely some thought-provoking questions. I think we could all benefit from reflecting on those a bit more.
I agree.
Now, I'm really curious about Roxie's take on self-care as a tool for manifesting. Is it just about bubble baths and face masks, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more than just pampering yourself. Roxie sees self-love as these everyday decisions: what time you wake up, what you eat, how you move your body, how you set boundaries.
So it's about making choices that really nourish your well-being and align with your values.
Precisely. And prioritization is key here. Understand what your main goals are and make choices that support those priorities.
I can see how that ties into manifesting.
Absolutely. And Roxie actually admits she used to be a workaholic, pushing herself to burnout, but now she prioritizes self-care to maintain her energy and balance.
It's so refreshing to hear her talk about balance. It makes her advice feel much more relatable and achievable.
It's not about being perfect. It's about finding those sustainable ways to take care of yourself.
Exactly. And that's where I want to ask you, what does self-care look like for you?
Yeah.
What are some small changes you can make in your daily routine to nurture your well-being? Those are great questions to consider. I think even small acts of self-care can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And here's a perspective I found really fascinating: Roxie's take on envy.
Oh, envy. I usually try to avoid that feeling altogether.
Me too, but Roxie sees it differently. She believes it's not something negative, but a signal that something needs healing within us.
Okay, that's a really interesting way to look at it. So instead of pushing those feelings of envy down, we should actually lean into them.
Exactly. Acknowledge them, understand them, and then transform them into inspiration.
Okay.
She believes envy often stems from a scarcity mindset, the belief that there's not enough to go around.
That someone else's success somehow diminishes our own.
Exactly.
So by shifting to an abundance mindset, we can start to see envy as a signpost, pointing us toward what we truly desire.
It's not about denying our desires, it's about reframing them.
I love that.
And she gives this great example. If you're feeling envious of someone getting married, reframe it as, this is another beautiful representation of love. I can't wait to experience that for myself when the time is right.
Wow, that's so powerful. Instead of seeing it as a lack in your own life, you're celebrating the abundance of love in the world and affirming your own desire for it.
Exactly.
I love that reframing.
And I'm curious, how do you typically react when you feel envious? Can you think of a specific example where you could try reframing that envy into inspiration?
That's something for all of us to think about.
It is.
Now, Roxie also talks about aligning our behavior with our goals. What does she mean by that? Is it just a fancy way of saying, take action?
It definitely involves taking action, but it's more than that. It's about making sure your actions are congruent with your desires.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And this requires stepping outside of your comfort zone, embracing discomfort, pushing through tasks even when you don't feel like it.
That sounds like it takes a lot of discipline.
It does, but it's also incredibly empowering.
Okay.
Here's a key takeaway. Doing hard things that are meaningful to you creates self-respect. And that self-respect fuels the entire manifesting process.
So it's not just about achieving the goal, it's about becoming the kind of person who can achieve that goal.
Exactly.
I love that.
And that brings us to a crucial question for you. Are you willing to do the hard work required to manifest your dreams? What steps can you take today to align your behavior with your vision? We'll dig into that more when we come back.
Can't wait.
It's not about forcing yourself into this like super strict routine or, doing things you hate.
Right.
It's more about pushing your boundaries a little bit.
Finding that sweet spot, yeah.
Exactly like Roxie. She talks about how she used to be such a workaholic
Oh, really?
until she realized that wasn't sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now she focuses on prioritizing self-care.
Which I think is so important.
And keep her energy levels up.
It's not selfish. It's essential. Speaking of success, Jay and Roxie have both achieved a lot in their careers.
Oh, they have.
But what I find so inspiring is that they both seem genuinely driven by this desire to help others.
Yeah, that really comes through in the interview.
It does.
They both talk about the challenges of success.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Especially that whole work-life balance thing.
That's a big one.
And Roxie actually opens up about, the struggles of being a working mom.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. She says she doesn't experience mom guilt.
Really? That's pretty bold to say.
I know, right?
Especially these days.
But she explains that she believes she's a good mom because she gives her son unconditional love and space to be himself.
So she's defined what being a good mom means for her, and she's living by her own definition.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
It's empowering.
It is. And she also makes this great point that our children learn more from our actions than our words.
So true.
Like if we're constantly putting ourselves last and sacrificing our well-being.
How are we teaching our kids?
It's like,
that's powerful.
it is. It really is. And it brings us back to that core principle of manifesting. It all starts with self-worth.
That inner knowing that we are worthy of love and happiness and success.
And that allows us to make choices that are aligned with our values and desires.
Not based on, societal expectations or what other people think we should be doing.
Exactly. Speaking of defining your own path, I found it fascinating that Roxie actually changed her name.
Oh, yeah. She mentioned changing it from Rowan to Roxie when she was just 12.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is that she did it for herself.
Not to please her parents or anything.
Nope. It was an act of self-expression.
Wow.
A way of stepping into the identity she wanted to create.
That's amazing, especially at such a young age.
It makes you think about, how much of our identity is actually chosen for us versus chosen by us.
That's a great question.
And it really highlights the importance of being intentional about who we want to be in the world.
Because when we align our actions with our authentic selves, that's when the magic really happens.
That's when we start to manifest the life we truly desire.
And both Jay and Roxie really embody that principle in their own unique ways.
Yeah, they've both faced challenges and setbacks.
Of course.
But they've used those experiences to fuel their own growth and empower others to do the same.
It's a reminder that manifesting isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about embracing it as part of the journey.
Because sometimes the most magical moments happen when we step outside our comfort zones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about one aspect of manifesting that I think often gets overlooked, and that's letting go of the need for external validation.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is, because if we're constantly seeking approval from others, we're giving our power away, right?
Exactly. And Roxie's very clear about this.
What does she say?
She says, energy is directional. You cannot be constantly focusing on what other people want from you while simultaneously focusing on who you want to become.
So we have to choose our own lane and run our own race.
Exactly. She uses this great analogy of running a race and constantly looking over your shoulder.
Oh, I get it.
You're going to trip. You need to stay focused on your own path.
I love that. And she also makes this really comforting point that no one on earth is universally liked.
Even the most admired, successful people have their critics.
Oh, totally.
And realizing that can be so freeing.
It really can, because it takes the pressure off of trying to please everyone.
Yeah, it allows us to embrace our authentic selves.
Quirks and all.
Exactly. And in that space of authenticity, that's where we can start to manifest the life we truly desire.
Without needing anyone else's permission.
Exactly.
That's so powerful. But letting go of that need for external validation, it can be tough.
That's a practice.
Especially in a world that's constantly telling us who we should be and what we should be doing.
Right, but it's about recognizing your own inherent worth.
Regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Exactly, and that's what allows us to step into our power and create a life that really reflects who we are.
Let's talk about the practical side of aligning our behavior. Roxie mentions the importance of doing hard things even when we don't feel like it.
She does.
But she also emphasizes that it's not about forcing ourselves to do things we hate.
Right. It's about pushing ourselves to grow and expand beyond our comfort zones.
So it's about finding the courage to do the things that scare us, even if they're uncomfortable.
Exactly. And she believes that by pushing through those challenges, we build self-respect.
Which in turn strengthens our self-worth.
Exactly. And that empowers us to manifest our dreams.
It's like proving to ourselves that we're capable of more than we think we are.
And that's a powerful belief to have.
It is. But she also reminds us that balance is key.
Right? Pushing ourselves too hard can lead to burnout.
Which ultimately undermines our ability to manifest effectively.
Exactly. So it's about finding that sweet spot between challenge and self-care.
Right.
And remembering that self-care isn't a reward.
It's essential.
It's part of the process.
I like that reframing.
It allows us to show up as our best selves for ourselves and for the people around us.
It's about creating a sustainable lifestyle.
That supports our growth and well-being.
Exactly. And speaking of sustainable lifestyles, both Jay and Roxie talk about the importance of aligning our priorities with our values and goals.
Makes sense.
If our actions don't match our priorities, we're going to feel scattered and unfulfilled.
Exactly. And they acknowledge that priorities can change over time.
Which is totally natural.
Yeah, life's a journey.
And our needs and desires evolve.
Right. So it's important to be flexible and check in with ourselves regularly.
Make sure we're still on track.
Exactly.
Roxie actually makes this interesting comparison. She sees her priorities as her best friend.
I love that.
Like our priorities guide our decisions.
And help us stay focused.
So if my priority is to improve my health, I'm going to make choices that support that goal.
Even if it means saying no to things you might enjoy in the moment.
Exactly. It's about having that bigger picture in mind.
Our priorities act as a compass.
Guiding us toward the life we want to create.
And that guidance can be so helpful when we're faced with tough decisions.
It can, because it helps us stay focused on what truly matters.
And make choices that are in our best interest.
And when we make choices from that place of alignment, we're giving ourselves permission to live authentically.
And that's what manifesting is all about, creating a life that reflects our deepest desires and values.
It's not always easy, but it's definitely possible.
And the rewards are worth it.
Speaking of rewards, let's revisit that idea of turning envy into inspiration.
Oh, yes.
We all experience envy from time to time. It's normal.
It's a human emotion.
But I love how Roxie reframes it.
Instead of seeing it as something negative.
She sees it as a signal that something needs healing.
Exactly.
Instead of suppressing those feelings, we should acknowledge them.
Understand them.
And transform them.
Into inspiration.
I love that.
She believes that envy often stems from that scarcity mindset,
That belief that there's not enough to go around.
Exactly. And by shifting to an abundance mindset,
We can start to see envy as a signpost.
pointing us toward what we truly desire.
It's not about denying our desires.
It's about reframing them.
And I remember that example she gave about feeling envious of someone getting married.
Yeah.
Instead of dwelling on that feeling, she suggests reframing it as,
This is another beautiful representation of love. I can't wait to experience that for myself when the time is right.
it's such a simple yet profound shift in perspective.
Instead of focusing on what you lack, you're celebrating the abundance and affirming your own desire.
And that brings us to a question for you. How do you typically react when you feel envious?
Can you think of an example where you could reframe that envy into inspiration?
That's powerful stuff.
It is.
Now, while envying other people's successes can be detrimental,
Definitely.
both Jay and Roxie believe that celebrating those successes can actually be really empowering.
They do.
They emphasize that supporting and celebrating each other's wins creates this positive ripple effect,
And that contributes to an overall abundance mindset.
which makes it easier to manifest our own desires.
Because when we see other people achieving their goals, it reinforces our belief that anything is possible.
It shows us what's possible.
And it fuels our own motivation.
So instead of comparing ourselves and feeling inadequate,
We can choose to be inspired.
I like that.
It's about shifting from competition to collaboration.
We're all in this together.
Exactly.
Now, Jay made this interesting point about hard work.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
He believes that a lot of people are working hard, but often towards something that's not truly meaningful to them.
He said, it's doing hard things that are meaningful to you.
That's where the fulfillment lies.
That's where the juice is.
So if we're feeling burnt out and uninspired, it might be a sign that we need to reevaluate our priorities,
Are we pursuing goals that are actually aligned with our values?
our passions.
Because when we're working towards something that lights us up,
The hard work doesn't feel like a burden.
it feels like a privilege
It does, and that fuels our motivation.
and makes it easier to overcome challenges.
It's a good reminder to check in with ourselves regularly. to make sure our actions are aligned with our hearts.
Because when we're living in alignment
Manifesting becomes less about forcing,
and more about flowing,
and that flow can lead to some pretty magical results.
it can.
But let's not forget that manifesting isn't about avoiding discomfort altogether.
Right.
Roxie had this brilliant point.
What was that?
She said, comfort creates self-care, but discomfort creates self-respect.
Wow, that's good.
I know, right?
It's so true.
It is. It reminds us that those uncomfortable experiences,
They teach us so much.
they build resilience,
They strengthen our character.
and they give us a deeper appreciation for those moments of comfort,
It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience,
the highs and the lows,
the challenges and the triumphs.
knowing that each experience contributes to our growth.
So instead of fearing discomfort,
We can see it as an opportunity.
it's a learning and expansion.
And when we embrace discomfort, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities,
Because it's often on the other side of our comfort zones.
that we discover our true potential.
And create a life that's truly extraordinary.
It's about challenging ourselves to grow, to learn to become the best versions of ourselves,
And that is the essence of manifesting.
creating a life that reflects our deepest desires and our highest potential. Yeah, it's like those uncomfortable moments really show us what we're made of.
They really do. It's like when we push through those tough times, we realize we're stronger than we thought.
Yes, stronger than we thought we were.
Like a muscle, the more you work it, the stronger it gets.
Oh, that's a good analogy. I like that.
And that strength, it helps us in all areas of life,
Oh, for sure.
especially when it comes to manifesting.
So how do you know when you're pushing too hard, though? Like, where's the line between, healthy discomfort and just burning yourself out?
Oh, that's a great question. And honestly, I think the answer's different for everyone.
Of course.
It's really about tuning into your own body, your own intuition,
Yeah, listening to those signals.
recognizing when you need to, rest and recharge.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And both Jay and Roxie, they really emphasize that throughout the interview.
It seems like they both have a pretty balanced approach to work and life.
Yeah, they do. It's inspiring.
It really is. They both seem to prioritize their well-being.
Because they know that when they take care of themselves,
They can show up better for everything else.
or everything and everyone else. Exactly. Now, speaking of taking care of yourself, I found Roxy's distinction between self-love and self-discipline really interesting.
Oh, yeah. How does she separate those two?
Well, she sees self-love as being kind and compassionate toward ourselves.
Okay.
But self-discipline is about holding ourselves accountable.
Okay.
It's about doing what we know is good for us, even when it's hard,
So it's about that balance,
between nurturing yourself and pushing yourself.
grow.
Exactly. And she emphasizes that both are essential for manifesting.
That makes a lot of sense. Without self-love, we might sabotage our own efforts, and without self-discipline, we're not going to take action.
It's like two sides of the same coin
Exactly. And when you find that harmony,
between those two.
it creates a powerful force.
For change, for positive change.
Now, Jay brought up another interesting point about how society often rewards certain behaviors that might not be aligned with our true selves.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, what was that about?
He was talking about how when he was younger, a teenager, he felt pressured to fit in with his peers,
Even if it didn't feel right.
even if it didn't feel authentic.
So he was playing a role.
Yeah, and it created all this inner conflict for him.
It's a good reminder that we need to question those expectations,
The ones we inherit from society are families.
because sometimes those expectations aren't serving us.
They can hold us back from living a truly authentic life.
And that takes courage to break free from those limiting beliefs.
To define your own values.
Your own path.
And that courage is essential for manifesting a life that you truly love.
Because when you're living in alignment with your authentic self,
You attract the right people.
the right opportunities.
Yeah, it's like the magic starts to happen naturally.
It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming the truest version of yourself.
It's a journey.
It
There's
is.
so many possibilities.
It really is. And Jay and Roxie, they're both great examples of that.
They really are.
They've both faced challenges, but they've used those experiences to grow and to help others.
It's inspiring.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into manifesting,
Yeah.
let's leave you with a final thought. How can you incorporate even small elements of Roxie's 7-step process into your life?
How can you start manifesting the reality you desire?
It all comes back to self-awareness,
Yeah.
self-compassion, and aligning your actions with your beliefs.
And if you want to learn more about her method, I highly recommend checking out Roxie's book, Manifest, 7 Steps to Living Your Best Life.
It's a great read. It's practical, insightful, and inspiring.
It is.
So that's it for this deep dive into manifesting.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, you have the power to create the life you want.
You do.
So go out there and start manifesting your dreams.
Until next time.
Happy deep diving.